What's up, all you bad motherfuckers out there? I am so excited to be finally doing this video. It's finally July 9th, which means it's finally time for the biggest, the baddest, the greatest UFC event in UFC history. UFC 200. The big UFC 200 show is finally here. I am so pumped because from top to bottom, this card is amazing. This is the first time that I've really been excited about every single fight since the very first prelim fight, and I cannot describe how amazing this card is, I'm going to do my best to try to, transmit my excitement to you guys, and I just hope that you guys are excited as I am, because holy shit, the UFC pull out all the stops in order to make this really the most memorable card of all time. And let me tell you, the big fights, especially Miesha Tate's fight as a women's fight, has a lot to live up to after last night's Joanna champion card. Joanna champion versus Claudia Gadelha fight. That was an amazing fight, and those two women are really gonna have to pull out, all the stops in order to top that card. Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes. So let's go ahead and start with Jim Miller versus Takanori Gomi. Now, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a shorter little prediction, just going to give what I think is going to happen and how I think it's going to win. Okay. So how this is going to go down is I'm going to do a shorter prediction for the earlier fights, and then once I get to the later prelims, I'm going to do more of a detailed prediction. So let's go ahead and start off with Jim Miller versus Takanori Gomi. I love this fight because Jim Miller is one of those guys who always goes out there to fight. No matter what, he goes out there to fight, and Takanori Gomi is a very similar man. Gomi was one of the legends of the sport, without a doubt. And let me tell you, it's not going to be easy to go against Jim Miller. I think Jim Miller's going to go out there and win because I think Takanori Gomi has been on a bit of a skid lately. He hasn't looked anywhere near as good as he used to be. But Jim Miller also hasn't been on the best streak of his life, but I do think that he's going to have just a little bit too much for him. I think his striking mixed with his ground game is going to be a little bit too much for Takanori Gomi at this stage of Gomi's career. So I think it's going to be a Jim Miller, probably a submission in the third round. Going to be a very good fight, though. Next up, we have Gegard Never Change Face Mousasi versus Thiago Santos. This is also going to be a brawl because, Gegard Mousasi is one motherfucking hell of a kickboxer, and Thiago Santos in his own right is also a very, very good fighter. He's pretty well-rounded. But overall, I think Mousasi is just one of the best guys in this division. I think, if you look at what he does, what he brings to the table, he really does have that type of championship caliber fighting. He just can't seem to get himself into that next level. But if you look at what he did at Strikeforce, he was the Strikeforce champion for a while, and he did battle with Jacare Souza, and he really had some good fights with the highest guys in that division. When there was guys like Tim Kennedy there were guys like Luke Rockhold, there were some very, very good fighters there, and for him to be champion of that organization, it means that he does have a lot of talent, and he does have the quality to, compete even in the UFC. And I think Thiago Santos is probably just going to be a stepping stone for him. I think he's going to get a knockout victory in the second round. Next up, we have fight of the night, Diego Sanchez versus Joe Lozon. I mean, do you really need words to describe how fucking badass this fight's going to be? You have Diego Sanchez, who is the nightmare. The nickname completely suits him. He's a fucking freak, especially when he walked out with that cross. That was one of the most legendary entrances I have ever seen, and probably one of the most legendary entrances there will ever be in MMA and in fighting sports in general. And he's fighting Joe Lozon, who is also a freak when it comes to fight night bonuses. He's always getting either a fight of the night or a performance of the night or something. Whenever these two guys fight, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be action-packed. Neither one of these guys are going to even take a two steps back. So this is going to be one amazing fight. I don't really know who's going to win either, because neither one of these guys are at a very high level as of late. I think Diego Sanchez probably has heavier hands, but I don't know, because Joe Lozon also has some sick ground game, but so does Diego Sanchez. So I have a hard time saying who's going to win this. I think I'm going to have to go with Diego Sanchez, but to be completely honest, I wouldn't be surprised to see Joe Lozon win. I wouldn't be surprised to see a draw, because these guys are just so evenly matched in some ways. It's just going to be one hell of a fight. Who cares about who wins? Just enjoy this fight. It's going to be amazing. Next up, we have Sage Northcutt versus Enrique Marin. I think this Enrico Marin guy was just pretty much put up by the UFC to be fed to the wolves, just because, Sage Northcutt, even though he is young, he does have a lot of talent, and he's coming off of a loss, so he does need a win, because the UFC do not like when their future superstars lose, and I'm expecting this Marin to be exactly what the UFC wanted him. It's probably a tailor-made matchup for him. I don't know anything about him, to be quite honest. But I think Northcutt is probably just going to knock him out. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be a finish because I don't know enough about Marin to know if he has that kind of chin, what kind of grit he has. But I think it's going to be a Sage Northcutt win, probably a finish. Next up, we have the rematch between TJ Dillashaw, the former Bantamweight champion, and Rafael Assunção. Now, the first time these two fought had a very controversial ending because they were fighting in Brazil, and TJ Dillashaw, many believed, actually won the fight, but he was robbed. I think it was a split decision by Assunção, who essentially, from what I can tell, I've never actually seen the fight, which is kind of dumb, but from what I've heard, it was pretty much a Dillashaw dominating him, but the Brazilian judges gave it to Assunção just because he took him down a couple times and tried to hold him against the cage and stuff like that. So overall, I think, TJ Dillashaw, ever since that fight, has taken some massive steps forward. His striking really is amazing. It's fun to watch, and the fact that he went to a close-ish fight with Dominic Cruz, I scored it 4-1 for Dominic. But either way, he went to he put Dominic Cruz under some pressure, and that really does mean a lot. So I think that Assunção, if he's also made some improvements, because I haven't seen him fight since, I don't think he's fought very often, and I think that the TJ Dillashaw is just going to be too much for him, because I think he's at that stage of his career where only Dominic Cruz in that division is going to be able to beat him. So I think Assunção is probably going to be in for a tough night. So I'm going to go with the TJ Dillashaw TKO in the third or second round. Next up, we have Big Rig Johny Hendricks, who once again missed weight, taking on Kelvin Gastelum, the other guy who is notoriously bad at making weight. However, he did make it this time. So Johny Hendricks has to shell 20% of his purse. I don't know what to make of Johny Hendricks. He always seemed to make weight before, but all of a sudden he can't seem to make weight. It seems like he's ballooning up too much, or maybe as he gets older, he keeps on putting on more and more muscle, and it's harder for him to cut that extra weight. He only missed by a quarter pound, but still, when you're a championship caliber fighter, a guy who's been champion before and he's fought for the title 3 times, you cannot afford to do this type of crazy shit, to miss weight nonstop and always seem to have something wrong with you. He's kind of like John Jones. Only difference is John Jones always seems to have some kind of, outside of the octagon problem, whereas Johny Hendricks always seems to have an inside his own head when it comes to like weigh-ins and stuff like that problem. So it's really annoying. I love Johny. I just think that he needs to get that fixed. However, what does he bring to the table? He brings a heavy hand. He brings some pretty decent kickboxing, and he brings very, very high-level wrestling. Kelvin Gastelum is no slouch. He has some good wrestling. He has some okay striking. He's not a bad fighter at all. I don't think he's the caliber of Johny Hendricks. I don't think he's a top 5 fighter like Johny Hendricks is. I mean, I think Hendricks right now is ranked number 6, but realistically, he's right there with the rest of the top 5. So I do believe that this is going to be a Johny Hendricks win. I think he's probably going to tire Gastelum out with his wrestling, and then maybe hit him with a big left hook, big left overhand, which is the famous Johny Hendricks shot. And I think that's probably going to finish the fight, to be honest. I think it's going to be a third round KO. I think there are actually going to be a lot of third round KOs this card, just because of the fact that all these guys are so good, and you don't really see a lot of first round knockouts when people are this high level. So anyway, Johny Hendricks, third round KO, or TKO. Next up, we have the headliner of the prelim cards. We have Kat Zingano versus Juliana, the Venezuelan Vixen Pena. This is also going to be a pretty good fight. Kat Zingano, in that Ronda Rousey fight, she really did look like a moron, but that was just because she made an awful decision to go in for that weird-ass flying knee. She basically half-assed it. If she'd have thrown it the way she should have, then maybe it would have had some success, considering Ronda's defense is dog shit, basically, worse than pretty much anything I've ever seen in a fight. So Juliana Pena does have some pretty good striking. She also has some pretty good wrestling. She's a pretty decent, overall fighter. She's pretty well-rounded. It's going to be a big test for her to see if she can beat Kat Zingano, because I feel like the winner of this fight could potentially be a number 1 contender. Now, it all depends on what happens with Holly Holm and if Ronda Rousey comes back, because obviously Rousey is going to be the cash cow for the UFC, and they're going to want to milk that. So it depends on when she comes back. But I think that the winner of this fight definitely has a case for being the next number 1 contender, based on, just disregarding Holly Holm and all that stuff, depending. I think that overall, I think Holly Holm fights Nina Shevchenko soon. So the winner of this one and the winner of Holly Holm, whoever wins in a more impressive fashion, probably could earn herself a title shot. I think it's going to be I don't know. To be honest, I don't really know who's going to win this one. I think it's going to be a decision. I do think it's going to be I'm going to have to lean towards Juliana Pena in this one, to be honest. Kat Zingano is good. She's very good. But I think Juliana Pena is going to be better at mixing in everything. And I think that she's just a smarter fighter as well. So I'm going to go with Juliana Pena. Now it's finally time to go into the main card. And do we have a big fight to open it up? Hells to the yeah. That was weird. But anyway, yeah, Cain Velasquez versus Travis Browne is a great fight. A very important fight in the heavyweight division because it has massive title implications. You know, where the winner of this fight could easily be the next number one contender at heavyweight. I think basically the contenders right now are between Cain. If Travis Browne can win, then he would definitely be in the mix. Right now, he isn't. Junior Dos Santos is definitely in the mix after beating Ben Rothwell, who was right there. And potentially even Mark Hunt, because if he beats Brock Lesnar, then his name is going to be everywhere. So that's something that the UFC would love to make, I would have to assume. Also, Fabricio Verdum is probably going to be in there in the mix as well if he wins his next fight. So keep an eye on that. So what do we see about Cain Velasquez versus Travis Browne? Now, we know that Cain Velasquez is one of the best heavyweights of all time, if not the best. And what does he excel at? Well, he has pretty quick hands for his size, and he is amazing at making a fight dirty and putting you against the fence and beating the shit out of you. However, what is Travis Browne's specialty? Hitting you with some borderline illegal elbows to the side of the head when you don't expect it, right? That's what he does. When you go for a takedown, you find yourself at his knees trying to pull him down from the hips. And what does he do? He manages to use those long-ass limbs that he has to elbow you on the side of the head. It's happened to Josh Barnett. It happened to, I can't remember who was the other one, excuse me. The first one that happened to, was it? Can't remember, damn it. Anyway, yeah, so it's happened twice before, and he's actually gotten the finish from both. So you never know. That could actually happen again. I don't think Cain Velasquez is stupid enough when it comes to fight IQ to get himself into that position. However, I think the fight's going to take place for the most part against the fence. And I think that Cain Velasquez is going to beat the hell out of him against it. I think he's going to hit him with some brutal elbows like he's done a lot of times. I think it's going to be very similar to the Junior Dos Santos fights, the second and third one. And I think that it's going to be a very, very bad night for Travis Browne. Which actually, I don't mind because I don't like Travis Browne at all. Ever since, for a while now, he's just seemed like a complete dick. It's probably better not to give my opinion on people's personalities, but I don't even like Cain. Because I'm a huge Junior Dos Santos fan. I'm a huge Junior Dos Santos fan. I actually, he's my favorite fighter. My heart melts every time I see a picture of him getting destroyed by Cain. And that... Just to show you how much I dislike Travis Browne, I want Cain Velasquez to win this fight. So yeah, I'm expecting Cain Velasquez to win it, probably TKO, I would say, in the second round. Next up, we have the fight for the Interim Featherweight Championship of the world, Jose Aldo versus Frankie Edgar. This is probably going to be the very best fight on the card. To be completely honest with you, stylistically, these two guys are a perfect matchup. Jose Aldo is the former featherweight champion. Frankie Edgar has been champion at lightweight in his past, and these two went at it a few years ago. It was a decently close fight, to be honest. Jose Aldo, I think, won 3-2. Frankie Edgar, he took a beating in the early rounds, but he definitely turned it on him in the last two, because Jose Aldo used to have that sort of habit of gassing out in the later two rounds and sort of coasting. Now, Jose Aldo does not gas out anymore. We saw it against in his Chad Mendes fights, in his last one. Not counting the Conor fight where he got smoked in 13 seconds. But that's besides the point. We didn't get to see his cardio be tested. All we got to see was his brain completely splatter against the floor. Now, sorry, Jose fans, but that's the way it is. Now, so we see his cardio has improved. We saw that in his second fight with Chad Mendes. But what does Frankie Edgar bring to the table? Now, what he brings is amazing wrestling, MMA wrestling anyway. He has very slick hands. He's very quick. And we've seen that he has some power. He can knock you out. We saw that against Chad Mendes as well, excuse me. And Jose Aldo is going to have to watch out, because I think that Jose Aldo hasn't quite improved all that much over the years, ever since they last fought, but I think Frankie Edgar has improved exponentially. I think this is going to be a very dangerous fight for Jose. I think that most people are going to favor Jose Aldo just because he really is a monster when his striking is on. Once he wants to punish you, you know that you're in for some deep shit, because that guy can really beat the fuck out of your legs. I remember seeing pictures that Uriah leg after his fight with Jose. I was like, oh my God, poor guy. How are you going to be walking on that leg? I was just like, oh God, it was just brutal to see. And Frankie Edgar took a beating to that leg as well when they fought. So it's going to be a very, very, very interesting fight. I think that Frankie Edgar actually might pull it out. I am pulling for Frankie when it comes to the result. I think that Jose might underestimate him a little bit. I think Jose is definitely going to want to go out there and make a point after being destroyed by Conor like that in such humiliating fashion. But I think Frankie Edgar is a nasty, nightmarish type of matchup because he really does everything very well, and he does everything with extreme precision. That's the beauty of his game, is that everything he does is so accurate and so hard to anticipate, and everything is just so perfectly timed and perfectly done. I think it's going to be a very close fight, but I do think Frankie Edgar is going to edge it out, probably in a split decision if I'm honest. But either way, this is going to be, if not, this is going to be in competition with Joe Lozon and Diego Sanchez for fight of the night. So keep an eye on it. Next up, we have Daniel Cormier taking on the legend, the Spider, Anderson Silva. This is also going to be a very good fight. Now, make no mistake about it, I am devastated by the fact that Jon Jones is off the card. I am a huge Jon Jones fan, and I've been waiting for this rematch for so long. I was so pumped about it, and to see it fall out like this is really, really disappointing. Honestly, I wasn't expecting the UFC to find an opponent that was going to be, able to replace Jon Jones from an interest point of view. The offers were like Gegard Mousasi, which, no disrespect to Gegard Mousasi, he isn't the type of fighter that I would expect to, I really want to see Daniel Cormier fight. I don't think it'd be all that much of a tough fight for Daniel. The other option, I think, was Alexander Gustafsson, who I would have loved to see, but still, he would have been flying all the way from Sweden. It would have been a tough time for him to get calibrated with the Las Vegas time zone. It would have been very tough for him to show up after the two had already fought. They did have a close fight, but I just don't think that Gustafsson's mentally there right now. It doesn't really seem, based on interviews he's had lately, he just doesn't seem like he's really, really hungry anymore. I think he's going to have one more fight to see if he still does have that desire to continue. And I think that once they got the opportunity to put Anderson Silva in this fight, once again, having some throat problems here, I think they could not pass up on that option because Anderson Silva, listen, this has been building up in my head ever since the fight came on. What happens to most guys once they start losing at a lower weight class, when they get slower? Not like a young guy, but we're talking about an older guy. What happens when an older guy starts losing in his weight class because his speed goes away, because his timing starts to go away a little bit? They move up in weight. They go up and take on slower guys so that they can sort of, rekindle that advantage they had against the guys at that weight. Now, for example, Anderson Silva at middleweight, in his peak, he was faster than anybody. There was nobody that could even keep up with him, right? He was a monster. Nobody could touch him. What happened when he went up to 205 and he fought respectable guys like Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonner? He toyed with them. He absolutely toyed with them. He was even faster than he was at middleweight, right? So since his timing and his speed advantage has sort of, slipped down quite a bit in middleweight, if he moves up to light heavyweight, will he not have a bit of an advantage compared to the other guys? Maybe not Daniel Cormier because of the fact that his wrestling is basically going to be Anderson Silva's biggest disadvantage. But doesn't he have an advantage over guys like Glover Teixeira and stuff like that who aren't quite as quick? I think that really could be a big factor. I'm not saying Anderson Silva is going to be a top 4 fighter because, you're going to tell me that he's going to beat Daniel Cormier, Alexander Gustafsson, Anthony Rumble Johnson, Jon Jones, maybe even Glover Teixeira. I think all those guys can beat him. However, I think he does have a good chance of being in contention at light heavyweight. Definitely has a better chance than at middleweight. Now we see what he did. We saw what he did against Michael Bisping. When he wanted to fight, he beat the fuck out of Michael Bisping. Make no mistake about it. He just toyed around with him too much, and he liked to stay against the fence. It's weird. I think that if Anderson Silva can really, really go at it and not just toy around, I think that's like beat somebody up, not giving him any second to rest. I think that Anderson Silva really could do well in this division, and I think this is going to be an interesting fight for Cormier because he is similar to Jon Jones. Don't get me wrong. They're both tall, they're both lanky, and they're both great strikers. But I think Anderson Silva brings a very different type of striking to the table, and I think Daniel Cormier, he's going to be honored of fighting against Anderson Silva. He's going to be very happy about the fact that he gets to make money even without Jon Jones. and he's definitely gonna have to watch out because this is not gonna be an easy fight. It's not gonna be an easy fight for anybody. I think Anderson Silva is gonna be on his back for most of it. I think Daniel Cormier is gonna win a decision. It's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna be that bad of a fight. Anderson Silva is out of shape. However, I think it's gonna be a pretty entertaining fight. It's gonna go to a decision. Daniel Cormier is gonna be the winner, but I love this fight. Next up, it's time for the co-main event, and it features the Beast Reincarnate, as they used to like to call him, taking on Mark the Super Samoan Hunt. Now, I just want to say, this is a very, very, very dangerous game that Brock Lesnar is playing. I understand he wanted to come back to fighting. I understand that the UFC also want him to come back to fighting. But Mark Hunt isn't your typical guy. He's not one of those guys who's going to play any of that shit. He's going to punch you in the face, and if he does punch you in the face, there's a 90% chance you're going to sleep. Nobody takes his punches and just stays up. Roy Nelson, who just took some monstrous bombs from Derek Lewis, went out cold against Mark Hunt. Brock Lesnar is notorious for turning around every time he gets punched, and if he does something like that against Mark Hunt, he's going to be in some deep, deep shit. So Brock Lesnar, let me tell you, Brock better hope that he gets Mark Hunt to the ground early and can keep him there, Stipe Miocic style, because if Mark Hunt can find his timing and if Mark Hunt can start touching your chin, my God, I feel bad for you. You're going to sleep without a doubt. Honest to God, I think Brock Lesnar, if he can take it to the ground, I think he does have a chance, but make no mistake about it, Mark Hunt has really developed some good scrambles. You can see that in his fight against Stipe. Early on, before he gassed out badly, every time Stipe would get him to the ground, he would show some very good hip movement, and he would actually scramble his way back up to his feet pretty quickly. Brock Lesnar is going to have to keep him on the ground. He's going to really have to hope that he can pound him out, because in 3 rounds, Mark Hunt has a very, very good chance of knocking him unconscious. Brock Lesnar does have some pretty good power as well. We've seen that. He's been able to knock dudes down with a simple jab just because he's so big and he has so much torque in that body. The guy is huge. I was so impressed when I saw him at the weigh-ins. I was like, holy fuck. I had forgotten how big this guy is. You see him in the WWE. I don't watch WWE, but you see him in pictures and stuff like that. And the other guys are also really huge because they're just bodybuilders for the most part, And you see him against a guy like Mark Hunt, who isn't a big heavyweight. Height-wise. But what got me the most was seeing him in that frame where he was next to Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is my height. Now, albeit Joe Rogan is 200 pounds, so he is huge. I weigh around 145. I'm a small guy. But, Joe Rogan is a pretty decently sized guy. You don't really see a lot of guys dwarf him the way that Brock Lesnar did. He's just so huge. It's not even about how tall he is. It's just about how fucking wide he is. And I think Mark Hunt's going to have an interesting time trying to break that, trying to get past that. But if anybody can do it, it's definitely Mark Hunt. His striking is amazing. And I think Mark Hunt is going to get a KO. I think it's probably going to be a first-round KO, to be honest with you. So keep an eye on that. But, I'm hoping it's going to be a good fight. I want to see what Brock Lesnar can do now. I definitely wouldn't mind if Brock Lesnar won and stuck around, because I think that it brings a lot of eyes to the UFC, and that would later bring the fighter pay to rise, I would hope. And so I wouldn't mind either guy winning. I actually sort of like the new Brock Lesnar character. I've seen some interviews with him, and he seems a lot more, laid back than he used to be. He's a lot more entertaining than he used to be as well. So either way, I expect Mark Hunt to win, but I wouldn't be upset at either guy winning. All right, so the last fight on the card is Miesha Tate versus Amanda Nunes, and I can honestly say that this is the one that I care about the least. I really do not care about this fight at all. However, I think Miesha Tate's going to dominate it because I think that she has a more well-rounded game. She can strike decently. She has pretty good wrestling. She's good at controlling women. She's also pretty good at holding a game plan, unless she's fighting emotionally like she did against Ronda Rousey in that second fight they had, where she was clearly the better striker, but she decided that she wanted to show Ronda that she could out-grapple her as well. So very stupid decision there, but I think she's probably outgrown that right now. I think Amanda Nunes does have some pretty good striking. She has 9 knockouts on her record. However, is she going to be able to do that against a woman like Miesha Tate, who fights pretty smart? I don't think she will. I think Miesha Tate's going to find a way to put her on the ground and either grind her out for 5 rounds or maybe even get a TKO in the 3rd or 4th. 4th or 5th, excuse me. And I just think it's not that great of a fight. I would have hoped to see Brock Lesnar, Mark Hunt as the main event instead of this. Even Daniel Cormier versus Anderson Silva interests me a lot more. And the one that really sticks out to me is Frankie Edgar versus Jose Aldo. That's a much better fight than this one. Much more interesting. Much bigger names as well. But at the end of the day, whatever, the UFC wanted to do this. So all it means is that me, because I live in Europe, this fight will be taking place at around 6:30 a.m. or 7 in the morning. So this gives me a chance to, if I do decide that I'm too tired, I can just take a nap. I don't give a shit about the fight. I'll probably watch it anyway, but I don't really care. If basically this is one of those fights that if it wasn't main event of this kind of card, I wouldn't even wake up to watch it. If it was like the main event of a fight night card, I wouldn't even care. I wouldn't even watch it. I just watch it in the morning. That's the type of fight that we're dealing with. However, I do expect it to be an okay fight. Miesha Tate usually does put on some decent fights, so watch out for Miesha Tate win here. She will still be the champion, and then she'll probably defend her title against Ronda Rousey or Holly Holm. But I'm expecting the UFC want to throw the cash cow Ronda Rousey in there, hoping that she can beat Miesha Tate for the third time and take that belt, because the UFC love themselves a little bit of Ronda Rousey, even though I don't. And I think most people sort of realized how her game isn't exactly that great. Alright guys, that's the end of this video. I really do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please hit the like button to let me know that you did. Please let me know in the comment section down below who you think is going to win these fights. And if you are watching this video after the fights take place, let me know if you were surprised by any of the results. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, and if you're interested in sports in general, check out punchdrunksports.com. It's a great website with a lot of funny articles and a lot of really good articles as well. I personally write about soccer and MMA on that website, so I hope you check it out. And if you are interested, check out Punch Drunk Podcast. It's an amazing podcast with hilarious people like Sam Tripoli, Ari Shafir, and Jason Tebow. Joe Rogan calls in sometimes. Nick Diaz and Nate Diaz there's some hilarious parodies on there. GSP also calls in all the time. He's the parody version. It is hilarious. If you're interested, find some clips on YouTube, but definitely check out the podcast. So thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you next time. Thanks for watching.